everybody, thanks for tuning into today's video. We're going to do a historic video today, and we're going to look at the classic summer of 1976. Now, the weather's been so dreadful in the last few weeks and couple of months that I thought it was time we had a look at a decent summer and see what can really happen if we get a good summer going in the British Isles. So yes, we are going to look at the daddy really of the summers, which is 1976. Now, before we get on with the video, I just want to talk about the advertising. There'll usually be a video ad overlaying my web videos here at GavsWeatherVids.com. Please play those video ads because you'll be supporting GavsWeatherVids.com if you do that. The other thing I want to talk about is the website where the charts came from. It's weathercentral.de. I've got a fantastic archive of historic charts going all the way back to January 1871. So get yourself off to Weather Central, have a look at all these charts. You can while away many an hour, and of course we're having some really miserable days at the moment. So when the rain's pouring and you can't get out, go to weathercentral.de, have a look at the historic archive and see some really interesting charts for yourself. So the story with 1976 really gets off in April. Well, actually we could start it in 1974, in December 74. That's when the really dry weather in the mid-70s started. The drought in the mid-70s started in the 74-75 winter, but we can't go that far back, and we've already done the summer of 75, of course, which itself was a hot and dry summer. So we're going to start in April 76. April 1976 was a dry month. It was generally fine with high pressure dominating. There was only 4 millimeters of rain at Plymouth that month. And by the way, I just want to talk about another website where a lot of the facts and information for this video is coming from. It's Trevor Harley's site. Now, Trevor Harley's website is a fantastic resource of information, wealth of information. Got every month indexed back to January 1900, and then they've got information. It's got information going much further back than that, actually, right way back to the 1100s in some cases. So a really outstanding site, Trevor Harley's site. You can find it on my links page as well. Go to that and you'll see all sorts of information. So I'll say April 1976 was a very dry month across many parts of the country, particularly England and Wales, and high pressure dominated, and it really set us up for what was going to happen. But this was a very dry period, of course. Remember, the drought really started in the winter of 74-75. Now, going into May 1976, which again was another very warm and dry month, we had a bit of a heat wave early on, and that was again another little teaser of what was to come. It got up to 29 Celsius on this day, the 7th of May 1976, when we had high pressure sitting just to the east of the country, bringing in some very warm air from the southeast off the continent. This was actually the warmest May Day since 1953, can you believe? 1953. So it was a very warm day, this May 7th. And generally, May 1976 was a very dry month. So then as we go through to June, and that's really the month where the heat wave started, the great summer began in June of 1976, and June 1976 was actually the warmest, with a central England temperature of 17.0. It was the warmest June since 1846. 1846 was the warmest June on record. So this was a really good, fantastic June, and it was very dry as well across many parts of the country. So this was the situation on the 1st of June 1976. Actually doesn't look much to write home about. There was a little bit of showery rain to begin June 76, and it was on the cooler side as well, of these westerly winds feeding in these showery bits and pieces of rain. But then as we go through to the 5th, where we start to get the Azores High beginning to ridge in, many of our best summers always have the Azores High as a strong and present feature. The Azores High has been conspicuous by its absence this summer, 2012, but the really good summers, they nearly always have the Azores High as a dominating feature. So this was a very warm spell starting on the 5th of June 76 with this Azores High ridging in, and as we move through to the 7th of June 76, it was very warm and sunny. Temperatures got up to 80 Fahrenheit in some places, and actually by the 13th of June it was turning a little bit cooler and fresher. But that early part of June was really the start of the hot summer. It was really the start of the heat wave. Let's say temperatures did reach up to 80 Fahrenheit in some places on the 7th, up to 88 Fahrenheit, 31 Celsius in the southeast on the 9th. But then I say, it turned a little bit cooler mid-month. North-south split really setting up here. The Azores is still very dominant here in the south, but it's a little bit cooler with winds off the Atlantic and probably bringing in some cloud and rain into Northern Ireland and into Scotland. Now, the real heat wave of 1976 started on the 21st of June. This chart doesn't look much to write home about, really. It doesn't look anything out of the ordinary, but what you can't see with this is that we're bringing in a warm front across the country. The Azores High is to the south of the country, and as we went on through to the 23rd of June, where we brought the warm front across the country, so we were in an envelope of very warm air, and we're building up this high pressure from the Azores. It's developing over British Isles and to the east of British Isles. This is very much a classic signal for a very hot spell. In fact, this was a very hot spell, because from the 23rd of June to the 7th of July, temperatures exceeded 32 Celsius, 90 Fahrenheit, somewhere in the British Isles every single day. That's 15 consecutive days from the 23rd of June to the 7th of July. 15, can you believe this? Consecutive days of temperatures at 90 Fahrenheit. Never ever before had anything like this happened. Never since has anything like this happened. This really was a truly incredible spell of hot weather. So as we go through these charts, well, there's the chart for the 26th of June 1976, that high pressure really dominating the weather. It's very hot, cloudless skies, baking sunshine. Of course, the ground is already dry because we've had 2 years now of dry weather. Well, certainly 18 months of dry weather anyway, so the ground is already completely parched, and with this baking sun parching the ground even more, well, you can just imagine that the ground cracked. Of course, you've seen the pictures of the way the ground cracked, and the ground just dried out, the rivers dried out, the reservoirs dried out. It was absolutely extraordinary. 5 days in this period exceeded 35 Celsius. 5 days, can you believe that? That's getting on for 100 Fahrenheit on 5 days. That really is quite extraordinary. On this day, the 26th, this day that you're seeing here, temperatures did get up to 35 Celsius in Sussex and Norfolk, and it got up to 35 Celsius in places again on the 27th. So as we go through to the 30th, and we're ending June still with that high pressure dominating, centred over Scotland now, still with the sun baking down on the parched ground. Absolutely extraordinary temperatures into the 90s Fahrenheit widely, and still into the start of July, which had a central England temperature of 18.8 and was the had a central England temperature of 18.7, I should say, and was the warmest, hottest July since 1783, which had a central England temperature of 18.8. So it started off very hot, and it stayed hot for quite some time into the month. So yes, this was the chart for the 1st of July 1976 at high pressure. Really dominant, and it still goes on into the 3rd, the high pressure dominating, the baking sun over the parched ground, rivers drying out, reservoirs drying up, standpipes appearing because the water resources were starting to dry out. And even into the 6th of July, the heat wave just goes on. The high pressure now centred more up towards Scandinavia, and a little bit of low pressure beginning to develop down to the southwest. This was coming up to the end of this extreme hot period, but nevertheless, this again was another very hot day with temperatures widely into the 90s Fahrenheit. And then finally, as we go to the period from the 7th to the 9th of July, it turns a little bit cooler, and we start to bring in low pressure off the Atlantic, just bringing a few showers across the country, 1 or 2 thunderstorms as it run into the heat. Not a great deal of rain, to say the least, but just enough to cool things down and just end that very hot period. But the high pressure was still there as an omnipresent feature, really. So as we go through to the middle of the month, well, it's trying to become unsettled. And actually, the northwest of Scotland didn't have much of a summer. Spare a thought for those people living up there, because weather fronts kept bumping up against the high pressure, and it was quite a cloudy, damp summer in the northwest of Scotland. But really, the bulk of the country here is still under high pressure, with the Azores hybrid dominating feature, and high pressure away onto the continent as well. So still largely warm and sunny. As we go up to the latter part of July, well, that high pressure is still there, really dominating the weather. It's to the west of the country now, but it's still influencing the weather in many places. Now, as we go to the end of July, this is quite interesting actually, because the high pressure pulls away and we pull down this northerly wind. Now, because the ground was so parched, because it was so dry, we actually saw a frost, can you believe? Even in this extreme hot summer, one of the hottest summers ever recorded, on the 1st of August, there was actually a frost down to Hertfordshire, and temperatures got down to freezing. So that's quite amazing, an amazing fact in itself. But just goes to show you that when the ground gets very dry and it loses its moisture, even in a very hot summer, you can get frost. So as I say, this is the situation at the end of July, the start of August. The high pressure is out to west. We're pulling down this northerly wind, so it's a little bit cooler, and we are having night frost. But it doesn't last, because as we go through into the 5th of August, we bring the high pressure back in across the country, and that really keeps the dry weather going across the country, and it turns pretty warm as well. August 1976 had a central England temperature of 17.6. Now, this wasn't as warm as August 1975, actually. So August 1975 was a classic month, and we've already talked about the summer of 1975. If you want to have a look at it, you can see on this page, my historical page at GavsWeatherVids, you can see the video for the summer of 1975. But anyway, on the 5th of August, high pressure was dominating. It was a very dry month, August 1976, and high pressure was pretty much dominating throughout. There we are on the 15th of July into the middle of July. The high pressure is still there, still dominating. One or two thunderstorms scattered in places, but generally extremely dry weather throughout much of the month. Very warm as well. And as we go into the 22nd of August, there's still that high pressure. Well, you think that we haven't seen an area of high pressure at all really so far this summer, and we're now up to the 7th of July, but here we are in 1976. It's high pressure all the way. You barely see any low pressure at all. This was really the total opposite of the kind of summer we're having at the moment, and this was starting to warm things up again. So, but as we went through to the 25th of August, temperatures actually got back up to 32 Celsius, 90 Fahrenheit yet again. So the hot weather even kept going to the end of August. But we was now starting to come to the end of the summer. Now, by this point, Harold Wilson had appointed a minister for drought, and the situation was getting incredibly serious. So, just to be serious for a moment, the situation by now was becoming incredibly worrying, and people were concerned that the reservoirs were going to completely run out, and basically the country was going to run out of water. That's how critical the situation was getting. But the Minister of Drought had been appointed, and you can guess, I'm sure, what happened next, because on the 28th, we're coming up to the bank holiday weekend, the high pressure moves away to the north and to the northwest. We start to pull in this easterly wind, and low pressure, yes, low pressure at long last is developing down to the south of the country. So as we go through to the 29th, there's the low pressure beginning to push up from the south. The high pressure is there to the north, still keeping the dry weather going over Scotland. But low pressure on the 29th of August, bringing thunderstorms to southern parts of the country. And those thunderstorms became even more widespread on the 30th. This was Bank Holiday Monday. Thunderstorms became very widespread across England and Wales. There was really severe thunderstorms with this, and many places have flooding. There was up to 70 millimetres of rain in some places across East Anglia in these thunderstorms. Air quality was dreadful as well. There was a lot of people suffering with asthma and other respiratory problems over this bank holiday weekend as these thunderstorms trundled up from the south. But this was the end of the Great Drought, and the low pressure did end it in style. It ended in spectacular way with violent thunderstorms breaking out. Not all droughts break with violent thunderstorms. If you remember the great summer of 1995, that didn't end at all thundery, but this one, 76, did end on a classic note with really violent thunderstorms. As we go into September 76, finally, the high pressure is still more or less dominating the weather. It's still trying desperately to hold on, but look what happens as we go to the 8th. The high pressure is breaking up, slipping away to the southeast, slipping away to the northwest, bringing a final end, just a final end to the Great Drought. And as we go to the 9th of September, well, low pressure has really taken over here, and in fact September 1976, as is often the way in the good summers in the 20th century, September ends wet. It was a wet month, a very wet month, actually the wettest September since 1918 across many parts of the country. So a very wet month, as often happened in the good summers in the 20th century. They end with a wet September. As we go to the 11th, this was an incredibly wet day, actually. That was 125 millimetres in one day with this area of low pressure across northern England on the 11th of September 76. As we go further on through the month, the wet weather remains. There's low pressure on the 27th down to the southwest. That's bringing up more heavy rain into the south and into the west as well. And it was a really wet autumn. The deluge continued into October, November, and everybody was relieved. It wasn't something that was bad. Everybody was relieved by this point that finally the drought that started in December 1974 and went on and on and on and on, finally it had broken, and the rivers were beginning to be replenished, and so were the reservoirs. And the rain, the generally wet period, continued then through much of the latter part of the 1970s. As is often happens, nature makes up for itself. So after a very dry period through the mid-70s, we had a much wetter period through the late 70s. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is what a really good summer looks like. We're not going to have it this year, but we probably will see it again before too much longer. Perhaps not quite to this extent, but certainly have another good summer. This is what they look like, high pressure all the way. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye for now.